I'm Jim Knight, co-founder of the Instructional Coaching Group, and you're listening to Coaching Conversations, where I talk with coaching experts from around the world so that all of us can learn better ways to make an unmistakably positive impact on the people around us. So I'm so excited to talk with you, Sarah. We've worked together. I don't know how long it's been, but I think it's got to be something like 5 years at least. We've been going to workshops, and you've been coming to the workshops. I've been learning from you. Initially, you were coming to my workshops and you were learning my ideas, but then what happened is I started to learn from you, and you were telling me about the programs you're developing, the great work you're doing. This is your third year presenting at TLC, is that right? Second or third year?
Second year.
Yeah, and you've got so many great things to talk about how to create a coaching program. And so I'm real excited to talk to you, and I just have a few questions as we work it through, and
Yeah.
stop me, interrupt me, whatever it takes. I want to make sure people know what you're doing because you're doing great things up there in Chicago. So it'd be great.
Thank you.
Could you say a little background about your school? Like, what's your school? What's the grade level? What's happening there? What's your role there?
So I teach two AP language classes at Antioch Community High School, and we're a suburban adjacent high school. We're right on the state line between Illinois and Wisconsin. And so the coaches in our program, we teach a couple classes, and then we also coach the rest of the day. And we have found that that has some really interesting buy-in from our teachers because we can talk the talk, and we're experiencing the same things that they're doing. And so at our school, our district actually really values instructional coaching, and they have really funded a lot of great things for us. And so in each of our two buildings, there are three coaches at each building. So they've really valued having diverse coaches and diverse voices in the coaching role in this school district.
So tell me about your background. I know a lot of it, but just for people who haven't heard about it, tell me sort of how you learned to be a coach, because what you're doing is exemplary. You really are doing a great coaching program. What went into developing you so you could do that work?
So our program really started, it was around like 2017, 2018, I believe. And our school's going 1-to-1 at that time with Chromebooks. And our our schools was like, well, we need people to help support this process. And at that point in time, I'd been teaching for quite a long time, and I didn't know if I wanted to be administrator or something else. And then one of my colleagues and good friends, he was like, Sarah, you should apply for this position. It was just a very nebulous role. It was like, we're going to help people learn how to use Chromebooks. And what I recognized immediately was that it needed to not be about Chromebooks. It needed to be about supporting teachers and helping them make the right decisions, whether that was technology or something else in their classrooms. And so um, I had kind of heard your name in passing and like through some initial research. And then um, Northwestern at the time was partnering with you. And so I was able to do 2 years back to back of coaching training with you. And then we shifted into COVID, and I really feel like that's when our program really like earned its credit, in our building. Like people were like, I need all this support. And we're like, great, we can be there to support you. What do you want to do? Let's make this happen. And so yeah, so we really like we're able to develop a program that is what our school needs. And we have a lot of teachers who participate in our programming and who are repeat customers. We found a lot of creative ways to get people to in the door and to keep them coming back. So whether it's through one-on-one coaching, or we do some group coaching at our building, which really came out of the pandemic.
Very cool. What would you say you've learned about coaching? I know it's a big question, but what are say a couple really important things you've learned about coaching?
Um, well, two of the things is like I really need to know the people that I'm serving. This
Mm,
isn't about me. It's about them and what's going to be best in their classroom. And I make mistakes all the time in this role. Um, but I think it's saying to the person that I'm working with, "I'm sorry, I cut you off right there. Like, let's start this all over again. I did not mean to do that." And just admitting that coaching mistake, and continually reflecting on how I could have had a conversation better, or how I could have put that teacher in a driver's seat in a better position. So, I had a conversation with a first year teacher yesterday, and I was rushed. It was after school, and I needed to rush off to go to my son's cross country meet, and I'm like the whole drive there, I was just kicking myself because I was like, I should have asked him if he was looking for, like, what kind of listening he wanted from me. Did he want advice? Like, what was his purpose of coming in? And so now I have to fix that.
Anything else you've learned?
um,
I mean, there's a ton of things you've learned,
yeah.
but
I
stand
mean,
out as
yeah,
big lessons that you've learned about
yeah.
coaching.
I feel like coaching has like transformed me in so many ways. It's transformed my being. Like I've done so much work to be a better listener and a better communicator that, you know, it's hard. One thing that I struggled with on a regular basis, and then this is one of those learning moments, is that not everybody has done that same work. And so, you know, I've learned that you have to really be forgiving of and have hope in the people that you're working with, that they'll get there someday too, that they have the capacity to learn and grow just like I have the capacity to learn and grow.
That's very interesting. It's funny how the coaching work and the life work kind of blend together. In fact, that's my TLC
Yeah.
keynote is really going to be about how those two things kind of fit together. But now what you're here to talk about mostly is the coaching program you've developed at your school. Tell me, first off, what do you mean by a coaching program? What is a coaching program? What is your coaching program?
So in our coaching program, we really focus our programming around like three central pillars. The first pillar is professional development. So we give like one-off professional development workshops. We do extended professional development workshops with our first year teachers. Um, we do just kind of these one-off workshop kinds of things, whether it's an hour long or 4 hours long. We kind of have those 2 formats. And then we have our coaching pillar where, we either have drop-in people coming in to seek support, or we have people who are in, working through an impact cycle with us. And we the third pillar then that we really kind of focus our time on is building school culture. So we have a culture pillar, and for that, like, we um, hold a variety of different like programming events. Some of them are in person where we ask people to come to us, and other things are like building school culture by going to them. Um, Teachers don't need more things on their plate. And so we try to make sure we're going to them. So like in-person culture events might be something like we have an annual Halloween party. Or during Teacher Appreciation Week, we do a festival where we put out games and we have, lively activities, and we have a theme for the room and things like that. It gets very kindergarten-y. Kindergarten teachers, please don't hate me when I say that. Um, the high school teachers love it. Um, Play and joy comes into that. We might do a craft or something. And then we do things like one year as part of our culture programming, we sent postcards to every single teacher, making an effort to recognize something that they've done in the building. Or last year, right before Thanksgiving, we did I don't know, I'm sure you've seen, like, sunshine carts and things like that, but we had, like, breathing strategies and, resources associated with it, and, like, people picked from coloring books to a soda to, whatever they needed in that moment to get them through the day. So, those 3: professional development, cycle-based coaching, and culture are our 3, like, 3 pegs of what our program does.
Um, I just this morning before we talked, I was talking with John Safir, who's written tons
Mhm.
of books about instruction. The Skillful Teacher is the one most people know him by. And he said, I think it's important for coaches to understand. I was talking to him about the Life Lessons Project, but he said, I think it's important that coaches understand that they shape culture. And that's exactly what you're seeing is the power of part of what you do is creating
Yeah.
a supportive, positive culture where you feel, yeah, I don't know, safe is
Yeah.
maybe a strong word, but you feel supported for sure.
Yeah. Well, and our whole goal behind that is this idea of we want people to come in here and we want them to come in here in their worst moments or in their best moments, and everywhere in between that. And if we don't have relationships with them, if we haven't built culture and community, they're not going to walk in this door. Um, and so that's really like the intention behind it. And then, once we have that community built, we can do the professional development. We can work one-on-one with a teacher and ask them to be vulnerable and brave, and we can go from there.
You want them to know it's a safe place and a place
Yeah.
where they're going to be seen and appreciated and valued, and that's what's going into all that. That's really, really great. Now, one of the things you're really good at is the idea of blending in new coaches into your program. So tell me a bit about how you do that.
Yeah, this really comes out of mistakes that I made. Um, uh, back
Most of
during
our learning, sorry to interrupt, but most of our learning at the instructional coaching group is the result of mistakes. So I'm right there with
yeah,
you.
yeah.
We
I mean,
screwed
back
up in this way. We learned this. So
yeah, back during COVID, I onboarded 2 brand new coaches, um, and it was a disaster. Like, one became very successful, the other, like, mistakes were made by all parties, including myself, and so then a couple years ago when Stacy joined the team, and super excited about Stacy joining, like, you know, she's like a beacon of joy in the world, I think, and, she I was like, I can't make these same mistakes," and so I sat down with my other coaching partner, Megan Troyer, at the time, and Megan's like, "Okay, well, let's." Megan gave me a little coaching, at this point, she'd been trained and had been through this for a couple years, and so she's like, "What matters? Like, like, what do you f what do you wanna do to make this better?" And so we came up with this idea of a coaching program or a coaching workbook as a way to onboard, a new coach, and that would be kind of like our conversational touchstones throughout the years, throughout the first year of that person being a coach. So we went from the very broad, like, reflective, like, what does it mean to be a coach, to the here are resources for you so that you know where to start looking. Um, and we were very intentional in thinking about, like, the big picture down to how we integrate them and their passions and their skill set into a new team. And um And so this workbook has tons and tons of the reflective kind of components to it. And not only does our new coach reflect on those items, but existing coaches in the program also have those conversations. And in some cases, the conversations extend beyond that first year of them being in our program. Um, and then I also like to enter into this idea of, like, when you're onboarding a new coach, like, they're going to feel lost in the beginning. It is just until they've had the training, until they've kinda gotten their feet wet, like, they're going to feel like, "How am I making a difference here?" And, the thing that I like to tell them is that when they're ready to take on more, they just have to tell me. Like, I'll invite them, you know, um, and but also finding ways throughout that first year of onboarding a teacher, like, that was really successful, has been, like, inviting them to partner on programming that's already happening. So, like, last year, we onboarded another new coach, and I invited her to co-run one of our group cycles that we had going on, and so she got her feet wet with writing professional development, she got her feet wet in, like, building checklists, and, things like that. So it's just a matter of always opening that door, but having the reflective components in place that they understand that coaching is really that reflective mindset.
Mm.
Um, and I think too, like being able to have common things to talk about is really, really important. Having a place to start.
So there's so many things I want to ask about. You and Megan are the ones who started the workbook. Is that
Yeah.
how? And then it's
Yeah.
probably been revised since then, and then you and
Yep.
Stacy have worked on it.
Yep.
So I want to hear about the workbook. Before that, could you sort of, how do you think, if this is a good question, how do you, like, what are the stages a coach goes through when they first become a coach? First thing is not being sure what's going on, maybe. How would you sort of describe the stages new coaches go through?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think the first stage is like, okay, I'm a teacher. I know that I'm a pretty good teacher. I've been hired for a reason. And we like to say that, like right up front. You've been hired to do this job for a reason. We see a lot of promise in you. Um, and so I think the first stage is like them getting to believe that they actually belong there. And that's kind of like the intention of the workbook. Like one of the questions we ask is something to the effect of like, what strengths do you bring to this team? And another question we ask them is like, what are some of your passions that you want to make sure that you get to work on? We intentionally try to hire people in this role that have been involved in our programming. That way they know like what our three pillars are and kind of the things that we have done in those pillars. Um, but then, like, asking them how they see where they fit in that pillar is really, it's like or not in those pillars, like, helps get them into the role and gives them a little bit of a focus. When we onboarded Stacy, Megan and I were, like, flying with PD and with impact cycles and stuff like that, like, that we really decided that, like, Stacy, because she is that beacon of joy, is like culture events would be good for her, and so she's one of those people who just, like, does such a great job of thinking through, like, w what kinds of things staff needs for, like, cultural things, and when we're developing these cultural, activities and programs, uh, people don't need to be, like, trained in coaching. They just need to be trained in how to talk to other people, you know? And so last year when we onboarded our newest coach, her name's Whitney, when Whitney joined us, we were like, "Whitney, this would be a great place for you to start and to get your feet wet," and she actually hates it. She's like, "This is not my cup of tea," even though you would never know. She did, like, the most amazing things last year, like, she was brilliant, and she's like, "This isn't where my passions are." So, like, at the end of this year, last year, one of our major focuses was thinking about, okay, so where do each of us now fit into this these pillars, and like how are we going to decide what everybody's responsible for? Um, we have found that, like, too many cooks in the kitchen does not work for us. So having like things that people are the leads on is really important for us. And that's part of that pillar process and onboarding a new coach.
What else have you learned about creating a coaching program?
Uh, I've learned that it's like a small business.
Mm.
Um, I mean, we've learned like everything from branding all the way down to like marketing skills to, asking for public opinion. Um, Actually, one of my colleagues, Rachel, she's actually sitting over here. She's a great sounding board for me. Last year we were struggling with like people coming to our one-off PDs. Like we hold lunch hour PDs like once or twice a month. And I was like, Rachel, why aren't people coming? And she's like, I need the dates ahead of time. And so, you know, we when our school sends out the back to school mailer, we had a calendar of events in there for the year when all of our professional developments would be the dates for that. Not what the topic is. Um, but then she can block it off on her calendar. And I was like, okay, well, that's genius. We can get our acts together and do that.
Hmm.
So,
So learning from other people, anything else about creating a program that you've learned? You've learned so much, but
oh, yeah. I mean, I think really it's in the beginning when they gave me a blank slate and just said, go do. I was like, okay, go do. I would say that if I was a new coach that was offered a blank slate, you have to get out of the room that you were assigned to or out of your office. Um, Walking through the hallways and turning like one-on-one conversations like, "Hi, how are you doing?" kind of conversations into a coaching conversation is your best thing that you could do. Um, uh, my mantra for and still is, but especially in those early days was like, "How can I support you?" And just asking like follow-up questions based off of what people said. Um, you know, "Where are you struggling in class?" Or if I stumbled upon a conversation where people were like, "Oh gosh, this was just the worst class period I've ever experienced," like, allowing that to become like a coaching conversation versus a commiserations, moment was probably the best thing that I could do, and it gave me ideas for programming. What are people needing? Especially for professional development. I mean, we've become the number one provider of professional development in our school. So like, the district doesn't have to pay as much money to send people off to PD um, because they've got us.
mm. Now, one of the things you told me when we sort of had our preliminary conversation was you have to find your people. Tell me what you mean
Yeah.
by that. What's that mean?
I think coaching can be kind of isolating
Hmm.
um, at times because you're separated. You're not necessarily in a department anymore. Like in our high school, we have the traditional English department and math department and things like that. And while I teach two English classes, the bulk of my day is not spent in English. And so like it can be a little isolating. Like you don't you don't have necessarily a content team that you're working on or the your day to day just ebbs and flows differently. And so finding people who are not only resources to you that can be your sounding boards, who can be um, kind of like those beacons of guidance is really important. But also finding people who like can commiserate. Sometimes you just need somebody to listen to you and says, "I know what you're going through. Okay, once you're done complaining about that, let's figure it out." Like finding those people I think is really, really important. And so we've worked really hard to like build relationships with like the coaches at our sister school. They've only been in this position, I think it's their third year. And, so we've tried really hard to make sure that we've been there not only as like resources to them, but also that we build like community. So we're required to have like monthly meetings with one another, but we often turn those monthly meetings into like we'll go out to lunch with one another or meet, like someplace in between the two schools for lunch. And that way it's not just about work. It's about knowing the people that you work with so that you can support one another better when when you do have to come together and work together. Um, Other things that we've kind of done is like there are so many instructional coaches out there and so many other coaching programs that have such amazing ideas. And like if it wasn't for the 9 million different types of, like, virtual PD that happened during COVID, like, I don't think I would be our program would be where it is today because if it wasn't for the idea sharing. And so, like, one of my favorite things about going to, like, TLC, for instance, is, like, meeting other coaches, hearing their experiences, and then making connections with people. I mean, I've made some connections where I have emailed people and said, "Hey, can you share that thing that you were talking about or that a resource with me?" And vice versa. We've had, people, um, come to us and ask, like, about our high impact communities as our group coaching cycles. And we've had people like, just reach out for a variety of things. And it's like having those contacts at other schools so that you can ask for support when you need it, I think is vitally important because everybody has such great ideas and ChatGPT shouldn't be your only like thinking partner. Although I do love ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's interesting, that's for sure, and
Yeah.
useful. And we have our course coming up on AI for coaching, so I'm all about it. I'm all about understanding it, the ethics of it, and then how to use it in the most productive
Yeah.
way. What you're saying about finding your people for coaches, though, I think that's so. We found the same thing that if you're a coach, you're not really the same as a teacher. You have a slightly different role, and you're not nearly
Yeah.
the same, really the same as an administrator. You have a different role. You're in this sort of netherworld in between. And so to find other coaches or other people who live your world with you that you can go and talk to and support. We used to build in get-togethers every Friday afternoon. We'd meet for the end of the week. It was part of our research was to look at what's worked and what hasn't worked, but it really became more important just to be you're not alone. There's other people with you. So I'm with you. Find your people. I think that's really, really, really a key thing. Anything else you want to share about creating a program, what you learned about coaching? What else would you like to say? I'll use Michael Bungay Staniers. And what else would you say?
I think, for me, it's just, like, trying it. If you have an idea, what's the worst that could happen? It doesn't work. I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of imposter syndrome in coaches. That is something that I've dealt with my coaching partners a lot over the years. I mean, I would tell you that I've probably dealt with that too, and I think, like, a way to combat that is just trying something and putting yourself out there and thinking through, like, not just short term, what do we need to do tomorrow or this week, but, like, what do I want to do this year? And so, you know, being able to kind of have some sort of vision and to go for it is really helpful. Like, these people, when you are hired as an instructional coach, somebody's believing in you that you can do this job and that you can make an impact on the teachers around you. And so you just kind of have to believe that yourself. And so just try something, just move forward. Um, and I know like for a lot of teachers, I'm so incredibly grateful that I don't have to do this job independently in my building or in my school district. But I think, for coaches who are alone, like finding somebody that can be a sounding board, a trusted person who can see big picture, and the little nitty-gritty too, I think is really, really vital. And walking up to that teacher that you don't know and making an effort to learn about them so that you can build a coaching relationship, I think is incredibly important. If I've learned anything, I think it's just that every moment could be a coaching moment. Um, but not every moment should be a coaching moment. So sometimes people just need to be people.
That's a great, great quote. It's interesting what you said about imposter syndrome. We talk about that uh, in the training on leadership, I think. And I quote Neil Gaiman, and he went to this event. You probably heard me tell this story, but he went to this event, and it was for all these creative people. And he was at the back of the room. He's standing beside this guy named Neil, had the same first name. And the guy beside him said, I don't know what I'm doing here. Look at all these great people. I don't belong here. And Neil Gaiman, who's was feeling the same way, and he's written all kinds of
Yeah.
books, won all kinds of awards. Um, he was feeling the same way. But the guy who just said to him, the Neil he had just talked to him was Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon. And he said, well, if the first man on the moon feels like a bit of an imposter, maybe we all feel like we're a bit of an imposter. But I'm here to tell you, you're not an imposter, Sarah. I've learned so much from you. So I'm so grateful for all the ideas. Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks. I've learned so much from you, Jim.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.